And have some breaking news now coming in. New Zealand and India have concluded a free trade agreement aimed at strengthening economic ties and expanding market access. The deal comes after nearly a decade since negotiations were last held and will reduce or remove tariffs on about 95% of New Zealand exports to India, with more than half becoming duty-free immediately. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon said the agreement could boost New Zealand exports to India by $1.1 to $1.3 billion per year over the next 2 decades. The pact is expected to support jobs, raise wages and create more opportunities for workers in New Zealand. Luxon highlighted that the agreement builds on the long-standing strong relationship between the two countries, offering New Zealand business greater access to India's rapidly growing economy. Let's listen in to New Zealand's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon about the deal.
Today is a big day for New Zealand. We have just concluded a free trade agreement with India. Now, this may not sound like a big deal for you, but trust me, it really is. And here's how you'll benefit. This is a landmark trade deal, reducing or removing tariffs on 95% of our exports to India. Of course, that makes it easier for Kiwi businesses to sell more of what we produce to 1.4 billion customers and one of the fastest growing economies in the world. When New Zealand businesses can sell more, they grow, and when they grow, they hire more people, and that creates opportunities right across the country. More jobs and higher wages for Kiwis. Trade already supports 1 in 4 New Zealand jobs, and this deal strengthens that even further because it backs our farmers, our growers, our manufacturers, and our exporters to compete and win on the world stage. And this deal will grow the economy and it will build long-term security for Kiwi families. We said we'd secure a free trade agreement with India in our first term, and we've delivered. National is fixing the basics and building the future.
All right, I'm now joined by Jayjeet Bhattacharya. He's an economist and finance expert, and he joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, sir, for joining me in this discussion. How do you see this landmark FTA between India and New Zealand? What can India gain from this FTA?
I think the first characteristics is the speed in which this deal has been concluded. From start to finish, it was done within 9 months, which really shows the convergence of interest between New Zealand and India. So, India is the largest country by population in the world, whereas New Zealand is one of the smallest ones in the world. And therefore, it's very interesting to see the interest of these, two very different kinds of countries coming together to have a trade deal. From an Indian perspective, we were exporting about roughly $500 million of goods to New Zealand, and New Zealand was getting sending about $400 million worth of goods. But interestingly, one of the strengths of New Zealand has been in dairy, and India has not been allowing that, and most probably this deal covers that part. And also on the other side, this deal covers an export of, or rather mobility of IT professionals, which was not there earlier. So it's a very significant watershed deal in that sense, because it allows a large number of professionals from India to operate in New Zealand, and the other way around. Many things which were not allowed, especially in dairy and agriculture from New Zealand, is now open for export from New Zealand to India. So it's a very interesting deal.
Sure, and in fact, a very ecstatic reaction also coming in from Prime Minister Luxon, as you might have just seen, which showed right before we had you on air. He's saying how he's happy about the deal and of the 95% cutback in tariffs. But how is this going to affect the exports, and how can New Zealand particularly expand its exports?
India's, if you look at New Zealand, they were largely exporting wood and wood products, a bit of iron and steel, which was actually about $50 million worth of iron and steel, coal, which is really needed in India, and raw wool. Now, the dairy products was really tiny, about 5.4 million, and they were these products, which means that processed dairy. What we're going to see is a significant jump in dairy-related exports from New Zealand to India. We'll also see a significant jump in agricultural exports from New Zealand to India. And why is India not concerned about it? While we were concerned about the same thing from US, is because the quantum is not very significant from New Zealand. And so we can actually bear it. And there is the exports from dairy and agriculture in from New Zealand are do not have a competition in India. So it's not really harming Indian farmers and so on and so forth. So that's really the difference in the structure of the agreement for this particular free trade agreement. So there will be a significant jump from New Zealand perspective. And look at it, New Zealand's GDP is roughly about 250 billion, which is less than 1/10 of India's GDP.
Yeah.
And therefore it's getting access to a much larger GDP in terms of exports. And as you mentioned, 95% of the products do not have any duties. They will just be coming in straight into India. So it's a very good deal for New Zealand, and it will also lead to a lot of investments into New Zealand,
Yeah.
because New Zealand can be used as a stepping stone for manufactured goods to be sent to India as part of the India-New Zealand deal.
And in fact, a lot of focus in this deal is also on services and mobilities. How can the Indian IT sector gain from it in terms of work opportunities and also investments?
So, it's not only IT professionals, it's also students, which has been, the doors has been opened up
Yeah.
to Indian students. And there are a whole range of professional services, not just IT, but a large number of other professional services for whom the doors has been opened up in New Zealand with increased mobility. So if you compare with US, to give the context, there's been a lot of pushback in terms of H-1B visas, which allow professionals from India to go and work in US. Those issues will be resolved in New Zealand. There will be no hurdles for the appropriately skilled people from India, including what you mentioned as IT, but also financial services, medical services, nursing, and so on and so forth, to be able to move to New Zealand and provide those services. It will also provide pathways to students who are studying in New Zealand to be able to provide the services in New Zealand and therefore gain meaningful employment, thereby supporting the economy of New Zealand.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharya, for joining me in this conversation and explaining that to our viewers. With that, viewers, we're now going to move on to news now.